Welcome to the Book Party Podcast. Join us as we journey into the world of books with Michael T. Prepare to be captivated by engaging interviews, insightful discussions, and fascinating stories. You'll discover new adventures and gain insight into the creative process of the authors themselves as they share their struggles and accomplishments. Now let's hear from Michael T.
This is Michael T., and welcome to the Book Party Podcast, a podcast featuring an author whose words resonate with the essence of life itself. Today we are pleased to introduce David Haznow, a seasoned writer whose career has spanned journalism, public relations, advertising, and more. With a degree in journalism from the University of Wisconsin, he began his journey as a reporter for the Watertown Daily Times in his hometown of Watertown, Wisconsin. David's storytelling prowess has evolved, weaving together messages, memories, and life experiences into a tapestry of compelling essays. He firmly believes that each of us holds unique and captivating stories within, waiting to be shared today. We delve into his remarkable literary works, I Told You I Was Dehydrated, and A Year in Words. I've never written a best-selling or won a book honor or writing award, never had my work adapted for a screenplay or accepted into a celebrity's book club, says David. However, his words are not driven by accolades or fame, but by the profound desire to share his stories, experiences, observations, and with you, the audience, of one who becomes part of his narrative. In these essays, David Haznow invites us to explore the realms of human existence where power, frustration, and vulnerability intertwine. His words are not just his own, they belong to anyone who chooses to read them. These essays are an invitation to enjoy, identify, and reflect upon similar experiences in your own life. Join us as we embark on a journey through the eloquent musings of David Haznow, an author who believes that the stories we hold within ourselves are indeed interesting, funny, poignant, and moving, and sometimes nothing short of incredible. Welcome to a conversation that celebrates the beauty of shared stories, memories, and the universal tapestry of life itself. So, David, why don't you take it from here, fill in the blanks a bit, and tell our listeners a bit about yourself?
Well, first of all, Michael, thank you for having me, and thank you for that wonderful introduction. You covered a lot of ground, and I am a writer by trade, passion, and that has been my career. As you mentioned in the introduction, I started out as a journalist. A beat reporter basically at a small town daily newspaper. And from there, I went into exploring other disciplines of writing, like you said, PR, advertising, and things like that. For the past almost 3 decades, I have been an independent writer, or what we call a freelance writer, with corporate clients and organizations where I've done everything from writing corporate video scripts and TV commercials to speeches, brochure copy, sales copy, things like that. But as a creative person and as a writer, I think anyone who does what I do always has a pet project, or always wants to do a pet project. And like so many other writers, I have, what used to be file cabinets and now files on a computer full of novels and screenplays and poems and just things that are half started or half completed. And in 2013, I was sitting around with my wife Joni, and we were sitting on the deck one summer evening, and I was having one of those crises of that many creatives do, and I just said, I got to do a project of my own. I have to get something done. And to her credit, she said, well, I've heard this tune before out of you. And she finally just said, well, you're either going to do it or you're not going to do it. And either one is fine, but we're not going to talk about it again. So That's kind of what launched this concept of a year in words. Is that evening we decided that I would write something and post it every day for 365 days. And I created a couple of rules for myself. I wasn't going to plan what I was going to write every day. I would get up in the morning and I would just write something. And I would post it and put it out into whoever and let anybody read it who wanted to. I do a cursory edit, and that was it. And after a year's worth of doing that, I had, 500,000 words to choose from. And these were all personal essays. It could have been childhood memories. It could be observations I had, something I saw on a walk. Some of it was very short fiction. But it was just these 1,000 to 2,000 word pieces that I honestly did off kind of in the moment as to what was going on in my brain. And what I did over the next couple of years from there is I took 52 essays, again with the year theme, and I put them into my first book, which was titled A Year in Words. And I published that. I self-published that in 2019. And then in 2021, I told you I was Dehydrated, which was another book of essays. Most of what I write is humorous, and to your point before, identifiable, everyday stories, right? It's the stupid everyday things that happen with a twist. It's the you make a right turn versus a left, and where did my day go today? And that's what I like to do. I like to write streams of consciousness. I like to write what other people are thinking, what other people have been through, and make it 100% identifiable.
Okay, so on your publishing journey for these two books, you mentioned one was self-published. You didn't mention the other. So did you self-publish the second one, or did you go through an agent and an agency route, or what did you do for the second one?
No, these are both self-published. I have yet to go the publisher or agent route. Not against it, but again, because I tend to write for what I call an audience of one. I write for myself and I put it out. And if you decide you want to read what I write and you like it, then you're the audience of one. And so that's not to say I don't want to sell a lot of books. That's not to say I don't want to have a publisher or an agent. But right now my focus is putting my stories out there to anybody who wants to read them. And what I realized with these first two books is that by self-publishing, I didn't have any barriers to entry. It was affordable to do. I could do it on my terms, and I could put books out there.
So when you did this self-publishing, did you do it indie style, or did you do it, did you have somebody else help you with like the editing or formatting or the covers or what?
Right. Yeah. No. Well, so what I did is the first book, A Year in Words, I wrote it, I assembled the essays, and I did a cursory edit. And then actually Joni, my wife, edited it after that. And then we had a designer do the layout and the cover design. And then we uploaded it. On the second one, we actually went outside and I hired an independent editor to basically do copy editing, not necessarily content editing. But to go out, and we paid someone to edit that one. And again, I went through a cover designer. I worked with a cover designer and a layout artist to get that done. I feel like while I could have done that, or we could have done that ourselves, I think when you're self-publishing, it's easy for your works to look like they're self-published if you don't have seasoned professionals who are doing the layout and design for you. So I think it's really important to put out a book that looks professional, not just in its content, but just in the way it presents as well. So for me, that was money well spent.
And I think so. I mean, I assembled a team for my books, the first three that I've already put out, and the fourth one I'm working on now. And, for editing, formatting, the cover and whatnot. And the team that I have happened to be all on Fiverr. And it works out really well for me because the first one, I had everything done except the cover, and I tried to do the cover myself. And you talk about an absolute disaster that was. So I found somebody to do the cover. It wasn't that expensive, more than 1,000 times better. And from then on, that's my cover designer. And matter of fact, I've got her making changes to 3 of my covers right now, and I'm going to re-upload those onto KDP. Simple changes, not the cover really themselves, but some wording and bio and stuff like that. What I had done is I had used pen names on those, and I'm taking the pen names off. You can't change the author once you load it to KDP. You can't change the author, but you can take the pen names off the book, put your own names on, and then in the bio you can just say, previously under pen name such and such. So that's how I'm doing that, to put my own name actually on the book for those 3. And it's inexpensive to have that done. And the 4th book, of course, I just won't do that anyway. I just put my own name on it. But it's always good to have a fresh set of eyes on there for your editing. And, that way it's just done properly.
Right. Well, and also, too, I find, and I don't know how you feel about it, Michael, but by the time I've written it, read through them a couple of more times, tweaked them, I'll be real honest, I don't want to look at them right now. I get through them for a certain amount of times. It becomes a real chore. And so not only, you're right, a fresh set of eyes, somebody who can look at it from the outside, but I believe you also get to a point where your eyes are also tired. Like, you will gloss over things that if I were reading it for the first time or somebody else had written it, I will catch that I will totally miss. But yeah, if for no other reason, it's just because I don't want to see that stuff anymore until it's done.
Right, exactly. Okay, well, take us to a point on either one of these or both of these books that you would consider your worst author moment.
Let's see. So I think for me, it does get to it's that point when I know I have enough stuff, but I get to a point in every one of my works where I go, it's a roller coaster, because at some point I'll pick 30, 40, 50 essays. Most of my essays are between 1,000 and 1,500 words. So if I pick 50 to put in a book, that's about the right volume, I feel. And they're all self-contained. There's nothing that's chronological about things. It's not memoir per se. But I get to a point where I get them all picked. I get them all chosen. And I order them out, and I read through them. I'm like, okay, these are the ones. And then where I bottom out almost every time is, at some point I go, this is all garbage. And again, that goes back to the fresh set of eyes. I want to rewrite everything. And I think I think the reason it's that way for me is because the things that I write are intensely and 100% personal to me. So, it's that whole idea, perfection is the enemy of, finished, or whatever you want to call it. You get to a point where you feel like your work is never done, but it has to be done. And so the hardest part for me to do is to look at it from the audience's lens, who is looking at that for the first time, and go, no, they'll think this works. I just have seen it so many times. I can't even stomach it anymore. That's where I bottom out.
Right. Okay. Well, that makes sense. Well, let's go to what we call an epiphany moment, where you take us to a point where you're not actually doing the writing, but you're doing something else. You could be driving, you could be watching TV, you could be having a shower. It doesn't matter. And all of a sudden, this bright light, big light bulb, aha moment comes into your head. You got to grab a pen and paper. You got to write it down real quick, because it's got to go in there. You have a moment like that?
I have moments like that multiple times a day. I mean, they happen all the time. So there's and again, I think the epiphany moment, one of the epiphany moments I had when I was writing A Year in Words, because again, I was writing every morning, is I was what I will call, I had a failed Cub Scout career. Okay. sounds kind of interesting, right? But I became a Cub Scout. I was a Cub Scout for a couple of years, and it wasn't for me, or maybe I wasn't for it. And so I wrote one essay about one of my experiences in Cub Scouts, and I showed it to a couple of friends, and they all thought it was really funny. And not to sound boastful, but I thought it was pretty funny too. And there was an epiphany moment in that where I was like, I should, and I don't typically do this with my essays, but I made kind of a series of Cub Scout essays. I'm like, because I had several different experiences where I'm like, I can run this out. So within A Year in Words, my first book, it's the only time when there's multiple essays about the same thing, and there's 5 different essays. So it's, and one is about, and I know it's hard to talk about how a near drowning experience can be funny, but that's the first one, where I think I did get my swimming certification or merit badge somehow in Cub Scouts. I think they did it as a courtesy, but I almost drowned in the process. And there was a Halloween party we had with our Cub Scout troop that didn't go very well. There were some other things, and so I made a 5-part series out of it. I remember the day I wrote the first one, I'm like, I can get some mileage out of this, and it was kind of fun.
Yeah, that would be kind of fun, wouldn't it?
Mm.
Okay, let's go to today. What is the one thing that you are the most fired up about or excited about right now, today?
As far as my writing, I feel like I'm at a point right now where I have, because of the way I write and the things that I write, for me, it's about, I kind of equate the way I write to songwriting, and that is, my instrument is the computer or the pen or whatever it is, whether I'm journaling or I'm talking into my phone or I'm on the computer. And I believe that what I'm really excited about is that I have the ability at any moment to sit down and put together something meaningful. Now that's not to say it's going to end up in a book. It's not to say that it's going to end up meaningful to somebody else, but that I can sit down and I can write a couple hundred words that could be the starter for a piece, or I could sit down and write an entire piece, because at my age, with the experience I have and just the muscle memory I've developed over the last 9 or 10 years of doing this, I love to create stories, and I love to create stories that, again, that reflect back on me and my observations. I've tried to write novels, I've tried to write fiction, and I don't know that that's my genre. I'd love to do some of that, but I'm really excited that I can, if you asked me to give me 20 minutes to write it down and kind of gave me a prompt, I could sit down and I think I could probably give you something that would at least be passable, at least on first blush.
Oh,
and I love that.
Good. All right. Well, this is Michael T. We invite you to go to the bookpartypodcast.com. That's bookpartypodcast.com. Hit that subscribe tab on top, then scroll down to the icon of your choice, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Odyssey, where you can download and follow us there, and please leave a review. And don't forget to sign up for our video newsletter and get the latest information on our upcoming shows. Okay, David, we're entering the lightning round. What that means is we have 4 pointed questions for 4 pointed answers. So before you became an author, and I mean writing the books, what was holding you back from becoming an author in the first place?
I think a lot of that was just not knowing exactly what I wanted to do with it, and I think, like many people, seeing the limitations of publishing a book. I mean, again, today there are few barriers to entry if you want to have a book. I mean, you can make a book. I hate to say you can DIY it, but that's kind of the way self-publishing works. You do what you can, and then you engage other people to help you. So I think a lot of it was that, and because it's a creative medium, I think some of it is always, for me anyway, there's always a little self-doubt. There's always, is this going to be good enough? Are people going to like this?
Once you started writing for these 2 books, let's say,
Mhm.
what was the best advice that you had ever received?
Know when to walk away. I had somebody tell me, and I was going through this crisis of, I think I need to look through them one more time, and somebody told me, they're good enough. Tell yourself they're good enough. Deliver these, and they will be good. They will be fine.
Okay. Share one of your personal habits that contributes to your success.
I get up very early every morning, and immediately I handwrite. I write with a pen in a journal, old school. I write usually 200 or 300 words. Again, whatever's on my head at that point. And then I go for a brief walk around the block just to think. And then I come back, and even if it's just for 15 minutes, I'll sit down at the computer and I'll write something for myself. That's become probably the best way to get me going in the morning, get me excited, and get my creative flow going.
Could you share with our listeners an internet resource that you use when you write?
I really don't, as far as writing, or as far as posting. I'm not sorry, like, if you're talking about, like, I don't really research anything that I write, because it's all coming from within. So I'm not exactly sure, what we're getting at with that.
Well, a lot of people say they use a thesaurus online.
Well,
But
I mean, every now and again I'll do that, or like, if I'm making reference, typically if I'm making reference to a quote, or if I'm making reference to a celebrity or to an ex-president or something like that, I will go on Google. I will Google something just to get enough, so that what I'm communicating is accurate. I don't do in-depth research, so yes, I will use a thesaurus every once in a while. I don't try to overwrite using adjectives and adverbs and things like that. But I will consult Google, and usually what I'll do, because I write in a relatively self-deprecating manner, is I'll say, I did some research on this, and in parentheses I'll say, and by research it means I type this into Google.
Okay. David, we are now entering the grand finale. So what I'd like you to do is take some time and tell our listeners about your books.
Okay. Well, again, my first 2 books of essays are A Year in Words, and I Told You I Was Dehydrated. A Year in Words, again, stemmed from daily essays that I wrote. And therefore, many of them came from my childhood, growing up in the upper Midwest, in the early to late 1970s. It has everything to do with, teaching myself how to throw and field a baseball by throwing an orange rubber ball against our garage, to again, my Cub Scout stories, to just all kinds of different life experiences that I've had. And what I did is I compiled, kind of the greatest hits of that year, and put them into a book. I Told You I Was Dehydrated, and it's very much stream of consciousness. A lot of people have told me that when they read my stuff, if they know me, they're like, this is exactly how I'd envision you telling a story. And I wrote it very much in the way my manic, squirrely brain works. So there's a lot of parentheticals in it. There's a lot of asides. There's a lot of notes. So it's a little bit disjointed every now and again, but that's intentional. I told you I was Dehydrated is the same type of thing. It's mostly humorous stuff, but I also put in little palate cleansers every now and again throughout the piece where there will be some serious things, just so that it isn't all funny. But I would say that I told you I was Dehydrated. The style is maybe a little bit more defined and a little less manic or stream of consciousness, but they're both they're similar in that respect. And I had a reader tell me one time, which I took as a great compliment, and I wish my father would have still been alive so I could have told him this because he would have appreciated it. He said, "It's perfect bathroom reading." He said, because I can read an essay. It takes me about 5 minutes. And if I want to put it down, I can put it down and then pick it up again later. And I don't have a plot. I don't have to worry about it. And I can read another one. And I also had somebody tell me, I sat down because somebody told me to read one of these essays, and I read one of them. And she said 3 hours later, I was still reading. So they're bite-sized, and if you don't, and the nice thing is too, then if one didn't really didn't gravitate toward one, you can move on to the next one because it'll be different. So that's what I write in a nutshell. I write stuff that I believe is identifiable. Maybe you weren't in the Cub Scouts, but maybe you were in some other group, and you can go, God, I can see that would happen to me, or I had that kind of a childhood, or like I do some readings at libraries and bookstores, and like I work a little bit with senior living places, and so I'll read to them. And the discussions we have then is, oh, you remind me of my son, or I remember when that happened in 1975, or, oh my God, that happened to me last week. And that's when that's what really jazzes me about what I do, because I love it when I see people's eyes light up and go, I get it. I totally get it. Or that's what I was thinking, or that's a story I could have told. Because again, I'm a firm believer that we all have stories. And we all have stories that are worth telling, even if we just tell ourselves, or even if we just document them for ourselves or for our kids, or put them in a cabinet somewhere so that someday somebody finds them. But we all have compelling stories. And to a certain degree, we all take our own life stories for granted. And I think this really doing these exercises for me and really pursuing writing these books has really given me an appreciation for everyone's personal story. It's made me a better listener when other people are telling stories. And it's really helped me encourage other people, especially as we get older, to document those things.
I like the idea that there's no plot to a novel, that you can read something in 5 minutes or 10 minutes, put it down with a marker. Next time, go read another one, put it down. Next time, go read another one. And you don't have to worry about, oh, I've got to go back a few chapters and remind myself of what's going on to,
Right.
keep reading or something like that, I like the idea of a book like that.
Well, and I have a couple of recurring, obviously my family are recurring characters. Joni, my wife, appears in a lot of essays. I have my cousin who his name is Mike, and he has been my best friend since we were very, very small. We're only 7 months apart. I always refer to him as best friend cousin Mike. So like I'll go to a reading and somebody will say, hey, did you bring best friend cousin Mike along? So there are recurring characters. There are little plot things that come and go, but if you're telling stories of your life, at some point those are going to be those are going to weave their way through, but you don't need to know them, right, to read one of the essays.
Right. Well, David, we thank you so much for being here with us today and opening up to us. I'm sure our listeners appreciate this too. Again, this is Michael T., and to all our listeners, I would invite you to go to bookpartypodcast.com, hit that subscribe tab on top, then scroll down to the icon of your choice where you can find us on one of your favorite platforms, such as Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Amazon Music, iHeartRadio, or Odyssey, where you can download and follow us there. Please leave a review. And don't forget to sign up for our video newsletter and get the information on our upcoming shows. Now, both of David's books can be found on Amazon. A Year in Words, and I'm sorry, I didn't have the second one in front of me.
I told you I was dehydrated.
I told you I was dehydrated. Both these books are on Amazon and can be found there. Book Party Podcast is owned and powered by MTM Legacy Publishing, LLC. This is Michael T. signing off.
You must not miss our next episode as we delve into a world of inspiration, entertainment, and thought-provoking insights. Join Michael T. on the next Book Party Podcast and experience a new adventure, a new story, and a complete immersion into the world of Pages Unveiled, Chronicles of the Writing Journey.